In this book, you read the story of Truman Smith, a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army who flew 35 missions in a B-17 over the skies of France and Germany. In April of 1944, he was a co-pilot, just learning the ropes. But by July of 1944, he had served his 35 missions. He was a pilot, and he was teaching others what it was like to fly a B-17. Now, I have read many books about World War II, and many written by people who actually fought in World War II. Truman Smith is one of the best storytellers I think I've ever read from somebody who fought in World War II. This book is really 35 short stories. 35 short stories of his 35 missions during World War II. Yes, there are some little ancillaries where he gets a weekend off and what he does in London, or where he gets 2 weeks off of rest. But really, this is the story of his 35 missions. And even though he wrote this book 50 years later, Truman Smith is a vivid storyteller. He makes you feel like you are in the plane beside him that's being racked by bullets of an enemy fighter. Or you feel like you are hearing the flak bursting all around your plane. And you struggle with him as he is trying to decide what he is supposed to do in certain situations. Truman Smith does a masterful job of being in the mind of a 20-year-old young man who is in Europe fighting. In 1944, it was not a given that the United States would win the war. And you feel that as you read this story. This story is not written 50 years later where you know what the end result is going to be. Instead, you're reading it through the eyes of a 20-year-old who doesn't even know if he's going to live to see the next day. You are reading this story from a young man who, when he begins, he only has to do 25 flights. And he doesn't know anybody who has completed that. And all of a sudden, he hears that it's going to be 35 flights. It seems like a death sentence. You need to read this book. Not only to be entertained about what it was like to be a 20-year-old 30,000 feet above Germany dropping bombs, but you need to read this book to understand what it was like to be a young man, a soldier during World War II, where you had no idea if you were going to live to see your family and friends again. This is a masterful workpiece, one which I encourage you to read. I'm not going to tell you all the great stories that are in it, because I want you to be entertained as you read this book and take yourself back in time where you get a better grasp of what it was like to fly 35 missions over Europe.